When I was a little girl, I wanted to save the world. I entered adulthood with an almost reckless sense of optimism. When I enrolled in college to study social work, I really, truly believed that I was going to finally fix everything. I look back at that kid now with equal parts admiration and exasperation. After working for a few years as a social worker, I realized that maybe saving the world was a little harder than I thought. But not to be deterred, I went back to school to earn a master's in journalism because what the world needed was better information, and I was the person to give it to them. Over the next few years, saving the world took a backseat to real life. Things happened. Marriage, divorce, remarriage, babies, that sort of thing. And for a while, I was content. And then I got sick. 7 years ago, almost to the day, I was preparing to die. My children were 4 and 10. My husband and I prepared a will, and we discussed how we would tell our kids about my illness. We hoped for the best, but we prepared for the worst. Every aspect of our family's life changed. We went from a 2-income household to a 1-income household. My husband got a new job, and we moved from the small town where we were raising our kids to the city so I could be closer to specialists. Obviously, I'm still here. But something happens inside of you when you face death. There's the you that you were before and the you that you become after. As I began the long road to recovery, my brain was ready to get back to life long before my body healed. So I decided to study autoimmune disease. I became obsessed with figuring out the why behind my illness. Over and over again, I kept running into the same idea, that there's a clear correlation between severe illness and trauma. After several months of research, I realized that if I was going to heal, if I was going to get my life back, I was going to have to dig into my trauma. I was going to have to courageously visit corners of my heart I'd been protecting. So that's what I did. I followed my hurts, and I slowly peeled back layer upon layer of complex trauma. And I made a surprising discovery. It all boiled down to love. Let me explain. First, it's important to realize that I'm not just talking about romantic love. If anything, romance is a distraction from the real meaty love that gives us purpose. So, how many of you here have ever loved someone else? Anyone else? A parent, a child, a spouse or partner, a sibling, a best friend? Hopefully everyone's raising their hand. How many of you are uncomfortable with conflict? Many of us. And I get it, conflict can be uncomfortable. How many of you are exhausted by the conflict within culture? All the infighting, the stalemate in Congress, the nasty bumper stickers, the family arguments around the Thanksgiving table. Many of us are tired of that. I know I am. The Redefining Love framework was born out of my desire to connect the dots between love, conflict, and culture. Through all my research and all my internal work, I determined that our cultural definition of love was killing me. It was literally killing me, and I'm not the only one. 75 to 90% of illness is caused by stress. 75 to 90%. But what does stress have to do with love? The dictionary defines love as strong feelings of warmth and affection. Now, this definition is great when everything is going well, but what about when it's not? If love is always strong feelings of warmth and affection, then when our loving relationships are hard or hurtful, it can end up feeling like we are a failure at love, which leaves us with a sense of shame and worthlessness. When we are emotionally hurt, we are called heartbroken. We are raised from infancy with the idea that if love doesn't feel good, we are broken. As a trauma survivor, I was really tired of feeling like I was broken. I had some very toxic relationships that desperately needed boundaries. I didn't want to hate anyone. I just wanted to love them from a safe distance. I didn't feel like our cultural definition of love allowed space for that. I knew there had to be a better way. I needed a definition of love that allowed for three things: firm boundaries, accountability that honored my big, hard feelings like anger, sadness, and disappointment, and grace that allowed space for my own mental health within my loving relationships, as well as forgiveness of myself and others. Boundaries, accountability, and grace are the three pillars of the Redefining Love framework. Redefining Love encourages us to explore ourselves and others with intention and curiosity. And this means that we explore the why behind our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Until we get curious about why we do things, why we say things, why we feel things, why we hold the opinions that we do, we're basically running on autopilot. So let's get curious about worthlessness. Regardless of what type of trauma you've experienced, they all leave us with a sense of powerlessness, and powerlessness leaves us with a sense of worthlessness. And what happens when we feel worthless? We develop the proverbial chip on our shoulder. We go into every interaction looking for a fight by default. And what does this create? Conflict. A few minutes ago, you all told me you're not comfortable with conflict. Yet our own sense of worthlessness is creating this very thing that we dislike. We wad up all that defensiveness, and we lob a big ol' shame sandwich at the other person. And then what happens? Your defensiveness triggers their defensiveness, which could be restated to say that your worthlessness triggers their worthlessness. And then you've both got something to prove. They take a big old bite out of your shame sandwich and throw it right back at you. And what do you get? A food fight. No. You get something that I call in Redefining Love a relational shame cycle. And that cycle is going to just keep on spinning until someone chooses to stop it. But what does choice require? Intention and curiosity. Just because someone throws you a shame sandwich doesn't mean you have to eat it. But you can't make a different choice if you're not intentional. And you can't get intentional if you're not curious. We can't get curious if we feel worthless and defensive. And what is born out of our sense of worthlessness? The feeling that we are unlovable. And where do we get this crazy idea that we are unlovable and bad at love? The cultural definition of love is always strong feelings of warmth and affection. So, this is messy. What on earth do we do with all of this? We redefine love to allow space for the big, hard messiness of life. We refuse to throw other people's shame sandwiches by getting intentional and curious about our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And we refuse to eat the shame sandwiches thrown at us by others. This is the accountability pillar of Redefining Love. So we only have one question left to answer. How does our own individual approach to conflict impact the larger culture? Let me ask you this. How can we hope to resolve all of the big, scary issues facing humanity if we can't even manage our own individual conflicts with boundaries, accountability, and grace? We've already established that we're exhausted by the cultural infighting, and no wonder. We're all trying to save the world all by ourselves. We're lobbing shame sandwiches at everyone we disagree with in the form of snarky memes on social media and nasty bumper stickers and sermons in our pulpits about how bad everyone else is. And what do we get? Not a food fight. We get a relational shame cycle on a global scale. No wonder the world is a mess. If I learn anything from my younger self, it's that one person can't save the world all by herself. It feels heavy and overwhelming to try to change systems, but it feels hopeful and manageable to work on changing our relationship with ourselves and others. Trying to change the culture is exactly what's keeping us stuck. We're living under this myth that if we can't change the culture, we can't change anything. So we do nothing. We sit back, nibbling on our shame sandwiches, and tell ourselves that it's all we can do, but it's not. The mission of Redefining Love is to heal our culture by healing our trauma one individual at a time. When we dig into the guts of our trauma, shame and worthlessness is always hiding there. So this mission could be restated to say, we will heal our culture when we heal our worthlessness, one individual at a time. Trying to save the world is way too much pressure. We're literally crushing ourselves beneath the weight of our own unreasonable expectations. When we get intentional and curious, we get accountable. We mindfully consider the why behind our thoughts, feelings, and actions. We allow grace for the big, hard feelings and our own mental health. We set boundaries, and we hold ourselves and others accountable with grace. And the cool thing about redefining love is that it's not a linear process. You don't get accountable, then set boundaries, then find grace. You just start. You meet yourself and others where you are at. You begin applying boundaries, accountability, and grace here and there until one day you wake up and it's become a habit, a way of life. And then you share your new healthy love with as many people as you can, and you watch the culture change. It sounds a little bit like magic, but it's not. It's redefining love. Thank you.